So I'm Jonathan Chapman. We're farming here at Bailey Hill Farm, which is in the Chiltern Hills in South Buckinghamshire. We farm about 7 blocks of land, totaling about 700 acres, just over. All the land is in the Countryside Stewardship Schemes. One is an arable conversion, and the rest is GS4, which is long-term, low-input permanent grassland. Soil type here is sandy clay loam over a clay and flint over chalk. So it's quite a mixture. It's quite difficult ground to farm in many ways. It almost the worst of both worlds. It tends to dry out in the summer very rapidly because we're on a hill and it's always breezy and it's south-facing a lot of the land. That speeds up the drying out process. Having said that, in winter it tends to lie wet because of this orange clay and flint layer underneath the topsoil. We are a pastoral farm, so we have cattle and sheep. We direct sell all the produce through our own butchery on the farm, and we practice mob grazing, which is basically grazing a large amount of animals on a relatively small area for a short period of time to imitate what omnivores, herbivores would do in the wild. The grazing then gets long rest periods to recover. This is both good for the plant itself because it allows the root to develop and grow deeper into the soil. So basically what you have above ground is more or less mirrored by what you have beneath the ground. This is good for soil biology and nutrient cycling, increasing carbon content of the soil, and in the process of doing that, improving water retention in what is quite a dry area. I think our rainfall every year here is about 620 mil, so it's quite low. So our first Herbal Leys went in 5 years ago on an arable conversion. So it's a farm that I'm a tenant farmer on, and as part of the mid-tier stewardship, you have to do a soil test before you drill the Herbal Leys, and the carbon content, the humus content of the soil was below 2%. It had been arable on a very short rotation of oilseed rape barley and wheat for about 25-30 years continual, so it wasn't very surprising. We planted the Herbal Leys for 2 reasons. One, to regenerate the soil, to improve the biodiversity on the farm, but also, from my perspective, to produce forage for the cattle. We also have sheep now as well, but it's mainly grazed by cattle. So we're in our 5th year now, and to say that it has surpassed my expectations would be an understatement, particularly in the dry years of 18, 19 and last year. It really comes into its own. It's deep rooting legumes, chicory, other herbs, sainfoin, plantain, that sort of thing. Will keep going when the rainfall drops off, whereas normal sort of commercial ryegrass varieties tend to go dormant and burn off. It provides a really good balanced ration for the cattle in terms of the minerals. So it's not just about protein and energy when you're feeding cattle, it's also about the mineral content, because that's what enables all the body systems to function correctly. And this is what the Herbal Ley gives you. It gives you a really good blend. It's like a salad leaf bowl, a blend of different things. So there's also variety there for the cattle to eat. So rather than boring old ryegrass the whole time, they can go and nibble on some white clover, some red clover, some sainfoin, or whatever happens to take their fancy. By mob grazing, keeping the animals fairly tight, we do encourage them to eat the whole lot, so they're not too selective at the end of the day. Otherwise you'd get certain varieties prospering and other things dying out. We have sown it in the spring, we've sown it in the late summer, autumn. We have done conventional cultivations, disking twice, conventional drill with the coulters pulled out of the ground and just dropped on the surface and rolled. We've direct drilled with a cross-slot drill. That was after a vetch and Westwold rye silage crop. So it's a fairly open stubble we've direct drilled into. That was in August. And this one we stood in now was after a winter forage crop, well, say winter spring forage crop, which we then just again drilled with a conventional drill and rolled. All establishments have been successful, but that is more down to luck probably than my skill. Every time we did it, we got rain immediately after we drilled it. After we rolled it, it got rained on for 2 or 3 days. And I think that is the key bit, and that is a lot of luck. So I think when we direct drilled it, we did it in August, and in that autumn there was a lot of grass in the mix and not much legume. The following spring, after we'd taken a silage cut off it, all the legumes came through that summer, and if you saw the 2 lays now, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They were the same seed mixes originally, just so established in different ways. All the farms we've got now are in mid-tier stewardship. So under that stewardship scheme, we have re-fenced them all and re-watered them all. So I've been very fortunate in that I've been able to design a watering system that suits the field's use. We keep things very simple. It's very, very flinty ground here, and it goes very hard in the summer. It's almost impossible to get electric fence stakes in the ground. Literally, you'd have to drill holes for every single one, so it's not really viable. So what we tend to do is have this field here is 5 acres. They're all between 5 and 7 acre blocks, which we then split in half with a single polywire fence. The troughs are all permanent troughs, concrete troughs, so they're in one place, and the polywire goes either side of the trough depending on which side of the field they're grazing. So they're grazing roughly sort of 2.5 to 3.5, 4 acre blocks at a time, which is again for a 50 cow mob is about 3 days roughly. So it varies from time of year, etc., but more or less that works out. The Herbal Leys have improved the animals' condition and growth rates. I think they are particularly useful with animals with high demand, so young animals, so yearlings, last year's calves. That's what we tend to prioritise on them. They get turned out in March, one because they're light, so if the ground is a bit wet they're less likely to damage the soil, but also they're at that stage of their life they need to grow frames, they need high quality protein, and that's what the Herbal Ley gives them. The first year I had them, I actually had the suckler cows out on them with their calves. I mean, the calves probably achieved the highest weaning weights, but the cows were so fat at the end of the summer autumn time, I was then very concerned that we're going to have calving problems. As it happened, we didn't, but we could have done, so we were a bit lucky. Once they came into the barn, they were on hay then until they calved, just to try and lose a 1 body condition score. So I would say you want to target them towards young animals where they have high growth rates and require high quality protein. In terms of welfare, and this tall grass grazing, I call it, Herbal Ley grazing, because the animal puts its head down into the Herbal Ley, you have a lot less bother with flies. We don't fly treat any of the cattle. We used to. I don't think it works, and it's taking out a lot of insects you don't want to take out as well. So we just now rely on the fact they're grazing very tall grass lays like this, and there is a benefit to it keeps the flies off their face as a bonus. The other aspect, of course, is the anthelmintic properties that the Herbal Ley gives to the animal. We haven't measured this directly in any way. All we do is feed to egg counts, which is the only kind of measure we can do, and that's indicative that they have very low egg counts when they're on Herbal Ley. So the chicory, particularly I think, bird's fat trefoil, the sandfoin, all have these anthelmintic properties, so I think they're all helping to achieve this low egg count. So in my mixes, you've done them for me as I sort of wanted them, which is with some more late perennial ryegrasses and creeping red fescues and things like that, which provide a bit of infill, if you like, between the plants, and then gives that soil protection. That's the only kind of thing that I would say. I mean, if you're making silage in bales, I wouldn't put chicory in the mix because the stalks will pierce the plastic, however much plastic you put on. And if you're chopping it in a clamp, it doesn't matter, it's fine. I think the chicory brings massive benefits to the soil in terms of penetrating soil pans and compacted soil, as well as the nutritional benefits it brings. And I think you have to accept that because there's 18 or 19 or whatever different varieties in there, they're not all going to prosper on your ground. I mean, we've got fields north facing, south facing, they're all within this vicinity, so have very similar rainfall, but different things growing them. So the soil type's slightly different, the temperatures are slightly different in terms of when they warm up in the spring. So some fields have more chicory, some have less, some have more lucerne, some have less. It's almost like the more stone in the ground, the more lucerne you have. It seems to do better on really bad, what we call really bad ground. And accept that diversity is nature's way of growing what needs to be grown in that soil. we're standing here, this is a 5-acre field. There's about 35 acres in this block here in total, divided into about 5 or 6 fields. And this has gone to stewardship, mid-tier stewardship this year. So what is at the moment permanent grass, not permanent, temporary permanent grass I should call it, is going into Herbal Ley this August. We were and ahhing when we would drill it, but we needed to lamb the sheep on the permanent grass this spring, so the August was the ideal time. So we will basically, we've spread all the cow manure from the barns on there in preparation. So as soon as the weather's right, we will disc it all and establish it. But getting that right will be we'll need a bit of luck again, but that will be the key thing really. In terms of what's in the mix, I think we're sticking with pretty much what we've got, assuming that all those varieties are still available. The Lucerne has worked very, very well for us over at Mickerfield Hall. I don't know if it is available, but it would be my preference if I could. And the Sandfoin has been a sensation. I mean, it's lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. It was very noticeable until last year. This year it has died off in its 5th year, but it's been a real eye-opener. I mean, one of the other interesting things about the Mickerfield Hall, where we got the 120 acres of it, is a big commercial shoot, and when it went from arable to pasture, the gamekeeper was furious. He thought he'd never hold his birds, he thought he'd ruin the shoot. This is what he told me in no uncertain terms, but in fact and he will admit this now, it's actually improved the shoot. If you want a game cover that you can graze, then Herbal Ley is the answer, because the insect life in Herbal Ley in the summer is absolutely unbelievable. Literally, you walk through here in midsummer and just clouds of insects come out of it. That's what pheasants love, you know, because it's tall, it provides really good cover from them away from predators. It's cool in the bottom of it, so if you've got a big shoot on the farm, it's a big win-win.